Hi, this is the Tiny Movie, and today I explain an action-adventure, supernatural drama of 2022. The Northman. Come and join me.
After a string of victories, King Avandel War Raven and his army make their way back to their castle, where Prince Amleth waits with his men. With the arrival of Avandel, Gudrun, who is now queen, officially welcomes him and encourages his son to do the same. Fionir, Avandel's brother, pays them a visit as they prepare to hold a ceremony, and during it, Gudrun is mocked by the jester Hymir, who Fionir despises, but Avandel insists that he's just joking. After reuniting with his family, Avandel presents his son with a necklace, an ornament that was once worn by the prince whose kingdom he annexed. Because of the wounds he received in the fight, Avandel has decided to appoint Amleth as his successor. The next morning, Avandel takes his son to the Hymir inside the Temple of Odin, the place of their ancient family's private ritual. There, the two drink a special concoction, and the Hymir the seer initiated a ceremony where the father and son acted like dogs who sought the help of God to transform into humans. They prove their worth to the gods. And in that moment of trance, Amleth makes a commitment to Avandel that he would carry out his vow to revenge him in the event that Avandel is ever killed. To honor Amleth's oath, Hymir takes Amleth's teardrop and holds it in his hand until the day he needs it again. Then, Avandel reveals the place of Amleth in the Tree of Kings. Incidentally, right after they stepped out of the temple and Amleth and Avandel are out in the woods, a group of horsemen come up and begin shooting arrows at Avandel. Amleth escapes on his father's advice and hides behind a rock. Avandel makes an effort to fend them off, but the other men end up overpowering him and stabbing him with their swords until he is on his knees. It is Fionir, his brother's killer, who is leading the charge. Despite killing Fionir today, Avandel tells Fionir that his rule over the kingdom would only be short-lived. Avandel is beheaded by Fionir, who then gives his troops orders to hunt and kill Amleth. As the boy escapes and hides from Fionir's soldier Finner, he is almost captured, but Amleth slices off his nose and flees. As he makes his way back into his hometown, he discovers that Fionir's soldiers have been looting and killing the locals and that Fionir himself is dragging Gudrun away from the village as she kicks and screams. Amleth runs to the ocean, where he takes a boat and sails away, repeating to himself,
"I'm gonna save you, father! I'm gonna save you, mother! I'm kill you, Fiona!"
The land of the Rus. Many years later, Amleth is now a member of a group of Vikings and, as a result of a ritual that they perform, turns into a berserker. Later, the men invade a town, where Amleth slaughters the soldiers while the rest of his company hunts down women and children. The survivors are taken in as slaves. During the night, Amleth goes inside a gloomy temple that is mostly deserted. He has a vision of a blind seeress who gives him the last tear he shed as a kid as a reminder of the commitment he made as a child. She informs him that he now has a second opportunity to revenge his father, rescue his mother, and murder his uncle. The next day, Amleth has a conversation with Erikr, a fellow berserker, who informs him that Fionir had been deposed from his realm by King Harald of Norway, which led in Fionir and his people being forced to flee to Iceland. A raven appears to Amleth, and he interprets this as his father's command to carry out his vengeance quest. Amleth gives himself the mark of a slave and, with other people of the Rus, swims to a ship carrying slaves. There, he meets Olga, a young Slavic woman who claims to have the power to corrupt men's brains. While Amleth is sleeping close to Olga, he has visions of Avandel, Gudrun, Hymir, and an exceptional sword. He also sees visions of Olga herself. Iceland. The boat seems to have overturned during a storm, killing several slaves while the others swim to shore. They are captured by Fionir's soldiers and brought to his farm, where he has married Gudrun and fathered a son with her, Gunnar, in addition to Fionir's oldest son Thorir. Fionir sees Amleth, but does not recognize him. Yet, his larger and stronger body than other slaves had piqued his interest to keep him as his slave. He's also very fond of Olga. Later on the same night, Amleth quietly slips out of his tent and goes for Fionir. He spots an animal and, after following it into another tent, he comes face to face with a he-witch. He is clutching the severed head of Hymir, whom Fionir killed, and then cut his tongue, eyes, and ears out before executing him. Amleth and Hymir are able to communicate with one another because of the efforts of the he-witch.
Hello, puppy.
During this conversation, Jaime reveals to Amleth the existence of the powerful blade Draugr, which Amleth would use to execute his revenge. Amleth discovers Draugr's location, where it's placed alongside the body of a dead king. As Amleth tries to grasp the sword, the dead king comes to life and fights him in a duel. Amleth beheads the skeleton before he can take the weapon from its hands. After returning to the village, he comes dangerously close to using the sword on many of the guys there. But he decides to hold on for now. He then sees Fjolnir's trying to seduce Olga, but she resists against him by spreading her period blood on him. Later on, the slaves are forced to compete in a game called Kennelaker, which is generally a more vicious version of lacrosse. But players may attack and even murder their opponents in order to win. Gunnar goes onto the field to play, but the opposing team's captain, Thorfinnr, pushes him down so hard that he smashes his head and becomes unconscious. As his mother and father run onto the field, Amleth tackles Thorfinnr and brutally headbutts him till he has a collapsed skull. After Gunnar regains consciousness, Fjolnir and Thorir praise Amleth, and Amleth is given a greater status among the slaves. After some time has passed, the slaves get together for a party in the woods, which they can freely sleep with each other all the night, and it is also during this time that Amleth makes love with Olga. Olga speaks to the earth and received an answer in the form of a mushroom that was poisonous enough to destroy the guards. She believed that they were destined to be together, and she was a part of his fight, and after that, they promised to bring Fjolnir to its knees. Over the next few nights, Amleth takes Draugr and kills some of Fjolnir's men, including Thorir's friends. He then hangs their bodies outside for Thorir to see. He tied the dismembered body part and shaped it into a horse, and hung it for all to witness the threat. Thorir shouts in grief at the death of his friends seeing the scene, and makes a public declaration to track out the criminal of their deaths. The same evening, Amleth murders two persons who are ready to perform a sacrifice ceremony with a slave girl. He hangs their dismembered bodies for Fjolnir and his troops to discover. While this is going on, Olga is helping Amleth out by giving some of Fjolnir's men hallucinogenic mushrooms, which drives them nuts and causes some of them to commit suicide. In another case, Amleth causes wolves to howl, causing Fjolnir's dog to attack him and cause him to stab the dog to death. Later on, Amleth goes to Gudrun's room, where he eventually introduces himself to her. She is shocked to see him, but not relieved that her kid is alive. Even though he tells her he is there to free her, Gudrun tells him that she is not Fjolnir's prisoner, but that she loved him and agreed to marry him. It was revealed that his father was a monster who had never really loved his mother. It was only because she gave birth to a boy that she was awarded the crown. Despite the wonderful stories that she used to tell Amleth about his father, she was his slave who raped by him before she became a queen. Gudrun reveals that she had also requested Fjolnir to murder Amleth when he was a kid. She then tries to seduce Amleth, but he rejects her. In a fit of wrath brought on by the truth, when Amleth walks out the room, he stabs Thorir while he's sleeping and then removes his heart. The next morning, Fjolnir finds what has happened and weeps over his son's corpse. He starts accusing the slaves of Thorir's murder. He then slaughters some of the slaves. But as he reaches Olga, Amleth appears with a bag holding Thorir's heart and offers it to him in return for Olga's life. After fighting off some of the men, Amleth gets tired, so captured by Fjolnir's soldiers. Fjolnir takes the bag, but Amleth claims it is the heart of the dog he killed. Amleth is imprisoned and cruelly tortured to reveal the location of Thorir's heart. When Fjolnir and his soldiers empty the room to go search place by place to find the heart, ravens appear. Supposedly summoned by Odin, they arrive to rescue Amleth. A Valkyrie appears and takes Amleth on horseback, flying in the sky to Olga's safe place. He departs with Olga on a boat, but as he kisses the wound where Fjolnir laid his blade on her, he gets a vision of the twins who are supposed to be Amleth and Olga's twins. Amleth swims back to the farm to complete his task, knowing that they would never be safe as long as Fjolnir lives. Olga weeps for Amleth yet prays for him to be guided. As soon as he gets back, Amleth starts killing Fjolnir's soldiers and setting the rest of the slaves free and walked into his mother's room. She attacked him, but this time he managed to pierce his sword straight through her heart. Gunnar jumped on him after watching his mother die. Amleth did not stop himself, and he murdered young Gunnar as well. When Fjolnir entered the room, he discovers the bodies of his wife and child. He put his sword away and instead took his dead son and wife into the room with him. but he asks Amleth to meet him at the gates of hell. The gates of hell. Amleth walks to the volcano Hekla, where he sees and honors the remains of Gudrun and Gunnar. He spots Fionir and the two fighting in combat known as Holmgang. They battle across the lava with their swords, with Fionir almost defeating Amleth. But the Amleth recovers his strength and manages to free himself from the situation. The battle ends when Fionir stabs Amleth through the heart, but he succeeds in decapitating his uncle. Amleth is dying, but he has a vision of Olga and their twins, one of whom would become the Maiden King, as the seeress predicted. He envisioned Olga and his two children were now safe and healthy. She asked that he make the passage that he had always dreamed of.
Now make your passage.
He watched as a Valkyrie made her way to the gates of Valhalla, where he would soon be carried to. He had earned a place in Asgard's majestic hall, which was ruled by Odin. And the movie ends.
Thanks for watching and subscribe if you want to watch more videos like this.